Professor Peter Dingle, or is it Dr. Dingle?
It's ex-professor, ex-associate professor, doctor.
That's right. How about Pete?
I know Pete's good. I'm good. I don't. Not into the titles very much at all.
But for everyone out there, it's an honour to have you here. So, former associate professor at Murdoch.
Yep.
30 years. So you're a researcher.
Yeah. Yep. So we actually. I did my PhD. I did my honours there. Did my PhD, and then for 21 years worked and left there as an associate professor. But in that time, I originally had my own little bit of research going on, and then I had a team at one stage. I probably had about 10 people doing various research projects with me over a couple of years here and there. So we've always gone back, and what I'm passionate about is three things. One is research, and it is so good with the internet. It is so good. Real research, going to the scientific journals, because when I did my honours thesis, I had to ride my bike around to all the libraries to get all the journals. My PhD thesis, the internet had just come out kind of, and so we were still getting hard copies. Now I just go online and I get access to thousands and thousands of studies on any topic. And so the research I love, and I love just getting it all together, because the second thing I'm passionate about is the fact that we're getting sicker and sicker, and we're spending more money on medicine every year, and nobody's actually fixing the underlying problem. And I hate seeing people sick. Every time I go out, whether it's a family function or, oh, look, I've got this. And everyone defines themselves now by how many diseases. Oh, I've got diabetes, and look, I'm going to get my left leg cut off. And, and it just frustrates me about how ignorant we are to what the body can do, nutrition and science. And then my third passion is getting the science on this topic of health out to the public. So communicating in a way that, it's fun, it's friendly, and people realise that there are really simple strategies. I give a talk, last year we did 90 talks around the country on gut health. And every time I give these talks, I say to people, look, I'm going to give you the 50-cent solutions. Sorry, this one's only 2 cents. Sorry, this one's 5 cents. Oh, hold on. Here's the pistachio nuts. Yeah, that's $1 solution, okay? I'll explain pistachio nuts later probably, but there are so many cheap, cost-effective solutions that if you just implemented them, you would make a huge difference to your life. And it's not the big things, it's the little things that people can do every single day. And
that's the key, isn't it? It's the little things, but you got to repeat it. It's a lifestyle.
Yep. Yeah. So we teach people to go home, reassess what you're doing. Do you want to be on that pharmaceutical treadmill of more and more drugs? A friend of ours, her father passed away about 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago. He was on 43 medications. 43. Wow. 3 of those were trials. How can you have a trial with someone on 42 other medications and you got 2 other trials going?
Unless you got a trial with everyone on 43 medications.
Exactly. It's just absurd, ridiculous. Anyway, so I hear this, I see this. The average 60-year-old is on 5 or 6 meds. I'm over 60 now, and I'm not having them, so someone's taking mine. And I'm talking about 10. My parents-in-law don't take any medication other than nutritional supplements, and they're in their late 70s, early 80s and things like that, and all their friends are just popping pills.
Yeah.
And we don't have to, This era is about marketing the drugs rather than just going back to some really common sense simple solutions that we've known for thousands of years, but what's really important now is the science shows it. So when somebody says there's no science, I say, get your head out of your
arse.
Yep. And go to PubMed, go to a scientific journal, even Google Scholar, and you'll find study after study after study. I can tell you right now, I can find probably within 15 minutes, I can find over 1,000 studies on how to lower blood pressure naturally.
Yeah.
These are the studies done.
Well, it's interesting because, and you have written, 17 books now? 15?
17, yep.
17. I remember when Emma, my wife, was post-grad studying medicine, she went in to start studying it. And right at the start, we just finished reading your book on cholesterol.
Yep.
right? And it was like, and her teachers were talking about it, so she took the book in, and of course, you'd think if that book is so heavily referenced, it's like crazy.
There's 600 references in that one book.
Right?
The book's that thin, you know. So.
Yeah, it's all references, and wouldn't even look at it. I know that wouldn't surprise you at all, but this is an interesting thing. It's no one will look at it. So if the individual isn't going to take responsibility for their health now and do their own research, and even learn how to do it, maybe, but like you said, 1,000 studies out there on how to lower blood pressure without medication.
And that's in the first 15 minutes. So, you know, we are literally just putting up our blood pressure course. So how to reverse blood pressure naturally, right? On our membership and things. And I've gone through and I've got over 1,000 studies showing that the drugs are ineffective. The drugs have these toxic side effects. And by the way, there's at least 20 different groups of drugs that cause high blood pressure. And if you're on 3 or 4 of these other drugs, then that's what's probably causing it. Anyway, coming back to all of that, you know, I've put this story together that, and here it is. Here are the studies. Here are the meta-analysis where they've put together 10 or 20 or 30 or, you know, even more studies and summarized it into one study. And these meta-analysis show that, for example, probiotics are fiber. Wow. You know, fiber. Drinking more water. It's not salt. It's the salt's imbalance in your body causing it. So telling everyone to get off salt is the exact opposite of what you want to do. You want to get them to drink more water, have some more potassium salt, which comes in the fruit, nuts, veggies and beans.
This is it.
You know, they've just got, they pick on one thing in medicine and they say, we're going to, you know, cholesterol isn't a disease. You don't die from cholesterol, you die from calcium in the arteries. So, okay, but then the medical industry said, well, stop having calcium. But then if you do that, your bones get, well, hold on. If this is constant vicious cycle of trying to deal with a symptom at a time.
Yeah, and this is because of the underlying paradigm, isn't it? Like this reductionism as a scientific leg, which has just taken over that form of medicine. They're reducing everything to the one pathway or whatever, when balance is a key one here, like you said. Like you're talking calcium without talking magnesium and things like. And magnesium is a natural calcium channel blocker, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a medication that they would choose to give you a medication for that rather than, hey, let's see if you're sufficient on magnesium. And cause them,
you know,
treat the cause.
When they tell people to go on the blood pressure meds to thin your blood, you know, aspirin and warfarin and so on, but they say don't have green veggies because they thin your blood. Don't have omega-3 fish oils because it thins your blood, you know. Where's the common sense in that? Your body has an immense ability to use the natural products because we evolved over millions of years with them. And so, you know, we can literally say, okay, let the body do what it does best. And all we've got to do is convince people. And that's why I have the studies, and, you know, all my stuff is a little bit too information heavy, but I hope one day a group of doctors will look at that and go, wow.
Yeah, but you do write well, don't you? I mean, you write for the common. Your books aren't hard to read. They're very personable. They're easy to read. They make a lot of common sense. And look, I think we're in an era now where individuals have to start to study a little bit. Yeah. I mean, my God, just a little bit.
Look, I run a lot of Facebook groups to do with health, gut, natural, you know, remedies and stuff. And I'm always communicating with people. And that was my third, if you remember the third keys that what I'm really interested in is communicating. And so you have to be able to communicate. You know, as a speaker doing all these talks, I have to be able to get up there and speak the language. And yeah, there are some terms, but I try to break them down, or I break them down so people can understand them, and then can walk away with strategies to do something because they understand a bit of the science. And I can tell you right now, when it comes to these type of issues, the medical people prescribing the drugs, don't get me wrong, we've got the best doctors in the world when it comes to burns, breaks and bacteria, but they are brainwashed. They are educated through a pharmaceutical system. There is no doubt about it. The studies, published studies, show that, and they show all the biases. But at the end, you know, I can run people through and say, look, here it is. And I want these people, the public, to learn enough to be able to go up to their GP and say, did you know? For example, do you know one of the things that really gets me is that how shallow people are in their research when they make claims. And when it comes to blood pressure, again, something hot on topic because I'm writing that course up now, right, finishing it up, doing graphics and things in it. And I looked at it and I go, hold on, do you know there are about a dozen different types of blood pressure? Hold on, what? So ask your doctor which type of blood pressure. And he'll say, no, there's only three. One is you've got blood pressure, and if you've got one or two drugs that deal with it, then that's fine. That's just called high blood pressure. If you've got another one that that takes 3 or 4 drugs, that's another name. And if it takes 5 or more and it's uncontrolled, then that's another one. There are only 3 types. Incredibly uncontrolled, with lots of drugs. They've defined it by the type of drugs, number of drugs, rather than what causes it. And I was doing all this research and I'm going, well, how do they test mice? Because at the animal models, the mice, the rats, the rabbits, the guinea pigs and so on, they have to create hypertension in them to test the drugs. So what they do is they, for example, will give rats refried foods, refried oil, not fresh oil, refried oil. And the more it's refried, yeah. Well, and then another group is the sugar. To literally create hypertension in mice, they give them sugar. In another one, they give them fluoride. In another one, they give them, and another one. So there's a dozen different types of, causes. And what I've done is put them all together, saying, look, this is what's in the studies. And then in the mice studies, and then in the other studies, they've been able to reverse it using, probiotics, water, potassium, magnesium, all of these things that I'm talking about. Getting off the junk foods, and instantly, as soon as people get off the junk foods and processed food, blood pressure drops.
Yeah, and this can segue into the microbiome and so forth as well, because one thing that I'm really interested in is, as far as blood pressure goes, is nitric oxide. I love that molecule. Yep. I like the pathway of it, and it's interesting because it begins with the microbiome in the mouth of switching. So how important is that? I mean, we're probably jumping ship. We should start in the gut, or maybe you should lead into this about how important the microbiome is, because you're the man there.
Look, it's really simple. First of all, I started on my microbiome and research 20 years ago, in actually 2002. I wrote a paper in 2004 on it.
Asthma.
It was to do with peanut allergies. I called it a peanut hypothesis about why people get anaphylaxis to peanut protein. Nothing to do with exposure to peanuts. It was totally exposure about your gut health. But coming back, what I've learned now is that we have microbiomes.
Yes.
Now, when people refer to a microbiome, they're usually referring to their large intestine, which is a little bit that goes up, appendix comes in, up, across, down, and you poo. That's it. And that's the microbiome, or the microbiota. The microbiome is actually referring to the genetics, and the microbiota is referring to the variety of species in there. But anyway, the microbiota. And what happens is we now know we've got this microbiome everywhere.
Yes.
So we've got an ocular microbiome, we've got a skin microbiome, and we've got a respiratory microbiome, which will determine if you're susceptible to COVID or not. Totally different topic. So we've got a placenta microbiome. Babies are now born. We now know they're actually born with some of the bacteria that the mothers actually have. Hence why it's so important for mothers to get it right and get them on probiotics and fibre and all these other things. And one of the other microbiomes we've got, and it's very well researched, is the oral microbiome. So let's start with the microbiome in the GI tract, and it's going up and down right to the bottom. And we know that your oral microbiome, and these studies were coming out 20 years, 30 years ago, showing that your oral microbiome is related to your risk of cardiovascular disease and diabetes and a whole raft of these chronic illnesses. And they've looked at it and said, okay, look, what is it now? Now we know that there are multiple factors. One, the toxins that they're producing and so on. And I'll give you the simplest hint, by the way, to fix up your oral microbiome. I'll hint that it coming to you. But what happens is it produces toxins. All these toxins, they get directly into the blood. They don't have to go through the liver. So they can go straight up to the brain and straight everywhere else in the body and literally poison the body. So hence it's linked with it. So if you've got any periodontal, oral disease, mouth diseases and so on, you dramatically increase your risk. But we now know that your oral microbiome will determine your esophageal microbiome. And what we're seeing is all of these gut illnesses increasing at the fastest rate of all illnesses. So something called Barrett's esophagus, which is inflammation in your esophagus, is going up at 600% over the last 20 to 30 years. And they're looking at the numbers and going, wow. And then esophageal cancer, the main one, which is a deadly cancer, wow, it's going up at 300, 400%. And everyone's saying, why? Well, it's pretty bloody obvious to me, but what we know is that the oral microbiome determines that. Then it's also influenced by your stomach, and you've got a stomach microbiome. Now, a couple of doctors were made famous in Fremantle because they identified Helicobacter pylori, but what people don't know is that is half of the stomach cancer problem. The other half is all the other microbiomes. So it's not just having Helicobacter, it's having the wrong type and larger numbers in your stomach, which, by the way, will then determine if you've got reflux, which will determine how you digest your food, and if you've got something called gastroparesis and things don't move through, or all of these conditions, which, by the way, will then determine if you get Sibo. Hold on. Sibo, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, or small intestinal fungal overgrowth, SIFO. And while I was aware of it, I didn't understand how big these problems were. And Sibo is massive. The best description is if you get bloating after a meal, pretty good chance it's a form of Sibo. And yes, there are different forms of Sibo. And this is the bloating after a meal, and I've seen horrific cases. In fact, Sibo is probably the single biggest cause of malnutrition in developing countries, and probably the single biggest cause of malnutrition in the elderly in Australia. Okay? And nobody is even bothering why. Have you ever wondered why older people don't eat much? Because they loved food when they were younger. It's because they get sick and they get bloating. They got reflux, Sibo, and then IBS, which the inflammatory or irritable bowel syndrome or inflammatory bowel disease down in the colon. So, and the thing about them is what happens in the mouth determines what happens in the esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, and vice versa, because that then sends messages back. Don't send any more food down. I don't want it. Yeah. Or your nervous system, which controls large parts of it, is shut down, so you've got reflux, and because of the reflux and the nervous system shut down, you've now got constipation. And hold on, I'll give you a laxative, or I'll tell you to go on fibre, but unless you actually fix up the nervous system link, it's
all interconnected, but there is hierarchy still, and that's what I appreciate. Hey, let's go back to the mouth then, because you said, hey, there's some easy tips. Like, I'm thinking all of these people that are still brushing their teeth with fluoride's not going to help.
Correct. I mean, look, fluoride's had its day, and if you haven't worked out that it's toxic, and it is, it's toxic to the stomach, it's toxic to the bacteria, it's toxic to your hormone endocrine system. It's interesting that one of the biggest issues I find at my talks and on our sites, people will say, what about thyroid issues? And I go, well, are you using fluoride? It's a thyroid poison. And it's a thyroid poison at the levels found in drinking water. Now, you add the fluoride in mouthwashes and you add the fluoride in toothpaste, and of course you're going to absorb some, because in your mouth, you don't have to swallow it, and you will swallow it, but the chemicals in toothpaste will destroy the lining of your mouth, which means the mucous membrane, which means everything in the toothpaste can get through into the blood straight away and get to all these other places without going through the liver and being cleansed. So using a conventional toothpaste is absurd. It's a chemical industry product.
What do you use?
I use low toxicity. There's no such thing as no toxicity, so I encourage people to use the term low toxicity. So it's got rid of a dozen or so major ingredients, from everything from sodium lauryl sulfate to something called DEA, TEA, got rid of the fluoride, it's got rid of the parabens and the phthalates and all these plasticky type chemicals. And it uses pretty well some herbs, spices, essential oils, and usually a little bit of sodium bicarb. And this is sodium bicarb, okay? There's one you get in the shop. It's fantastic. For hundreds of years we've used it. And for the last 50 years, people have told don't have sodium bicarb. But if you give it to a racing horse, they run faster and further, and they're not allowed to because it's such a good bloody...
Plus, it's natural, isn't it? I mean, the pancreas dumps it in. But yeah, because we've got the zero store here and everything's plastic free and and you've got so many different forms of toothpaste to use. And once I was using what I thought was toothpaste, but it was an underarm deodorant. Everything's made out of the same stuff. It's also bicarb. But yeah, I was using the bicarb and stuff for a while, but oh man, it tastes so bad. You know what I mean? It's like, it's good to...
Well, my message for people who want to use bicarb, it's a pretty simple story. You do half a teaspoon mixed in with some water. First thing you do in the morning before you wake up.
Yeah.
Before you wake up. Why? Your stomach's empty.
Yeah.
And it goes through there's a little transit system that takes all the liquids through into your small intestine. And here is a hint. You actually want the sodium bicarb to get into your small intestine. Because that's where it becomes alkaline again. It goes from acid to alkaline. And sodium bicarb, first thing in the morning, can actually work wonders there. But you absorb it. You've got all your body has various sodium bicarb systems. Your pancreas, as you mentioned, injects it into the small intestine to alkalize it. Your stomach lining in the outer cells there produce sodium bicarb so it doesn't get digested by the hydrochloric acid.
Hey.
Yeah, it works as a buffer. And we've got these buffering systems all over the place. So a little bit of sodium bicarb. And by the way, you may as well rinse your mouth in sodium bicarb during the day because it alkalizes the mouth. It's only a short-term fix, but it helps alkalize
and so
the mouth.
Back with the mouth, I don't want to stick on it, but I would just, so the rest of the thing would be diet, wouldn't it? People eating too much sugar, too many processed foods, and all these chemicals changing the microbiota in the mouth.
Oh, look, absolutely. You know, you have to have a healthy microbiome. And I wish I knew this when I was a kid, because for the last 20 years I haven't had troubles with my teeth, other than what happened as a kid. In those days they went in with chainsaws and jackhammers and took everything out, but it's really simple. That it's not so much the direct sugar contact on the tooth that causes the tooth decay. This is where the dentists get it wrong. What it is because you're having very sugary food, processed foods, oils, all those processed foods, your body is trying to eliminate all the acid, the extra acidity in your foods and your diet and your lifestyle through your kidneys, your gallbladder, your mouth, wherever it can. And to do that, you'll end up with a pH of about 6.5, which is just slightly acidic. And the pH of 6.5 from your saliva, it actually starts to demineralize your teeth. Now, you should have a pH of 7 to 7.5, which is just neutral to alkaline, and in your saliva you've got minerals. Wow. Calcium, magnesium, bicarb, and what happens is they can actually help rebuild your denture, the enamel around the outside of your teeth. That's what it's designed for. But if we're in a slightly acidic state, it then obviously demineralizes, does the exact opposite, makes it more vulnerable to bacteria, because the bacteria like slightly more acid conditions, so they can thrive more. That's why I said wash your mouth out with sodium bicarb. All of a sudden, they won't like it. They really won't like it. But the acid from your saliva, and you can do a simple pH test. Go to a chemist, get some pH strips. Do your saliva, spit on it a bit, leave it there, see what colour it changes. Do one for your urine. Urine's great. You know what's really interesting? All of the places where your body eliminates things, kidneys, gallbladder, guess what they form? Stones. Here's a bit of chemistry. I learnt this in year 10. Acid, base, crystals. So we've got acid in our body, slightly acidic, okay? I mean, minuscule amounts, because your body is constantly readjusting. So your body doesn't really become acid, but it dumps the acid through your kidneys and gallstones and saliva and so on. And to do that, it has to go through, get filtered, and hence you end up with acid, alkaline, crystals. Everything becomes a crystal, so you end up with stones. It's such a simple formula. And I thank God I listened to that chemistry teacher in year 10. I think I failed back then, but you know.
You got to work it out. Hey, and that's like, so stomach acid's a big one because a lot of people think they got too much stomach acid, and the truth is the majority of people have too little.
Well, let me tell you, I'll correct that even further for you.
Shed light.
Okay, and again, and virtually nobody knows this.
Yep.
Honestly, because what it does is when I come up with a concept, it's usually 100 papers have gone into reading 100 papers to bring together the picture of it. And what we now know is that, first of all, for the vast majority of people, it's not too much stomach acid. What it is the stomach acid getting up through your little muscle at the top of your stomach called your lower esophageal sphincter, a muscle, a sphincter. And so it comes up and it gets into the esophagus, and there's a whole new body of research on that too. And it causes heartburn, and it causes, you know, people have it all the time, and about a quarter of the population have that, and you know, an eighth of them have it seriously. So there's about 1 billion people in the world with heartburn. Coming back to that though, what we know is we used to think it was not enough acid, so people are supplementing with some hydrochloric acid and vinegar, which does work. But my latest proposal is it's actually not enough acid, it's the distribution of the acid in the food in the stomach. And I'll give you a classic example. If you want to stop reflux, the single best thing people can do is eat small amounts slowly. So instead of gulping your dinner down, your king-size overfed dinner late at night, which is a guarantee that you're going to get reflux, instead of doing that, have your meal at 6 to 7, have it a smaller meal, and have it slowly, because every time you put food in, it sends messages through a little neurohormone in there called gastrin and says, okay, more acid. More acid, more acid. So if you're eating slowly, the acid's getting distributed amongst it, and it's getting mixed up because your stomach muscles going boom, 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 boom. But what happens is if you eat a big meal, your stomach says, oh, I better put out a lot of hydrochloric acid. And it sits on top of the food. Hold on top of the food.
Right.
Which is close to your lower esophageal sphincter. Acid burns the sphincter, irritates it, causes all these other things that are going on there, and, excuse me, that's what happens. Yeah. That's the single best up-to-date
makes sense, doesn't it?
description, 2020 description of what's happening. And literally, it's called an acid pocket forms on top of the food. So what we want to do, and I've helped thousands of people by just saying exactly what I said, eat smaller meals, slower amounts, take your time, let the acid and the digestive juices get in there and mix it. And your chances of reflux go down dramatically. Now, if you're on junk food, you're going to get it no matter what.
Sure, but like it's interesting what you're saying too, because it's holistic, isn't it? So a lot of people are eating fast because they're rushing, stress. If you looked at their breathing, they're not belly breathing and things like that. So to unravel some of this stuff, people just have to have a step back and actually just slow down again, don't they? And hey, how about actually slowing down and saying thanks for the food before you start and get a new ritual going and just slowing down? Because what's the saying? You got to drink your solids and chew your liquids, wasn't it, back in the day?
I mean, look, it is so simple, and yet the first thing you'll be prescribed when you go to see a doctor or over the counter is a Nexium, a proton pump inhibitor that stops the acid being produced in the stomach, which is the exact opposite. But it's the exact opposite of health for the very simple reason your acid in the stomach doesn't just digest food. See, if your acid in the stomach isn't at 3, you can't digest minerals, calcium, magnesium, zinc, copper. You can't get them. So if you're taking these drugs, your pH of your stomach is somewhere between 4 and 5.5. So it's really moving towards being alkaline, and as a result, you can't digest the minerals. But if you can't get your stomach to 2, then literally you can't digest proteins. And proteins aren't just for muscle building. They're the working molecules, all your enzymes, your DNA, your RNA, all of the stuff that's done, your digestive enzymes, your metabolic enzymes.
Neurotransmitters, that's pretty important.
Serotonin.
Yeah.
It comes from tryptophan, an amino acid, serotonin, melatonin, that's relaxation and sleep. And by the way, your gut produces 400 times melatonin, 400 than your pineal gland.
Is that right?
And so If you really want to get good sleep, you get the melatonin in your gut. By the way, this is where I come in with pistachios.
Ah, we got the pistachios.
Pistachios are the richest source of melatonin by around about 1,000 times.
Is that right?
So,
wow.
Yeah, this is my 50-cent solution.
That's a nice one.
Costs more.
Because melatonin, as far as the inflammasome goes, and like as a regulator of inflammation, is massive.
Yep, absolutely.
But I thought it was all a sleep-based thing. I didn't think you'd be able to get enough through. Oh, there you go. So pistachios.
Pistachios.
Man, you got shares in that market?
I tried. I rang
the
him
pistachio secret diet.
But you know, there are so many other things on that pistachio thing. Okay, I'll link there. You're producing 400 times more in the gut than in your pineal gland for a reason. Because it's not just a sleep neurotransmitter like serotonin, a happy transmitter. They're important messengers for your whole gut. So they control whether or not it's relaxed or calm, open or closed, the things go through it or not. Hold on. So I'll give you a simple example. If you take antidepressants, you're more likely to have reflux, irritable bowel syndrome, and these other conditions because it upsets. You're actually not producing enough of the tryptophan, serotonin, and melatonin link. So all those negative side effects that people, by the way, and weight gain as a result of taking the antidepressants, what are called the SSRIs like Prozac. But the message is these are critical for digestion. So I'm really big on telling people go out and have some amino acid supplements, good supplements that have been broken down so you can get all those essential amino acids, because if you're not digesting, and most people aren't, 50% of the population, and I can tell you right now from our talks, 50% of the population aren't digesting properly, and they will have these not clinical deficiencies, but subclinical deficiencies, which means they're showing signs of, whether it's everything from alertness and mental health and stress and anxiety, right through to your gut symptoms, right through to your chronic illnesses like diabetes too, all of those conditions, and it just comes back to digestion. So you've got to get the digestion right.
And so, I mean, enter green smoothies a little bit, hey? Because I remember at the start of your microbiome book, the blueprint. Yep. No, what is it? The gut Secrets. Gut Secrets, great book. Nice thumbs up by Sandra Cabot there too.
Ah, right, yeah.
Big fan she is by the sound of it. But great book. And right at the start there, you tell that story about your mum being in hospital.
Yeah.
Doctors said, look, she could be dying.
Yeah.
And you start sneaking in some green smoothies like a cocaine mule.
Absolutely, with some added probiotics.
Yes.
And literally within a day, having it twice, within a day, Mum was up and alert.
I should preface that too, because she hadn't had a stool movement.
Oh, correct.
For a long time, and then you started to get all that moving with your probiotic, fibrous green smoothie, blah, 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 and then 10 days later, she's good as gold.
Oh, 2 days later.
2 days later.
2 days later, 10 days she was out of hospital, and they were telling me she's, delirious and it's because you got all the toxins through the constipation. And on that topic of constipation, that is huge out there. And look, the answer isn't just probiotics and fibre and water, because it's like your stomach, the movements in it and everything is controlled by your nervous system, neurotransmitters, hormone system, depending on your nervous system. Something called your vagus nerve controls largely your stomach and your colon. But your endocrine system has a lot more impact on your small intestine, so it's a balance. And by the way, the one mechanism that sends the signal to control all of that is pH. pH. The level of acidity will send the messages to actually operate, open and close and move and do everything through. So that sends a signal to the nerve system to open on this feedback loop. And so that's why when you're taking these drugs, these Nexiums of the world and proton pump inhibitors, you might not have acid reflux, but it's sitting in your stomach longer. You're feeling heavier, and it's not digesting, and then you end up with Sibo and IBS and all these other conditions because you're just not getting back to the basic cause of it. And look, we've given some people hints, and we've had a response within 2 to 3 days. Thank you. I've had reflux for 20 years of my life. Blood pressure. I've had this lady had a blood pressure of 210 on 110.
Whoa.
pretty high. It's supposed to be kind of 110 on 60, 70, 80, something like that. And literally a month later come back and said, it's 110 on 80, thank you very much.
Yeah, treat the cause.
And all we did,
treat the cause, man.
We gave her nutritional strategies and, a few lifestyle things, and it's all connected. Like you said, the breathing one. Let me give you an example of we no longer breathe. So when you eat, take your time and breathe. In between meals, breathe. Do some deep breathing. Do some Wim Hof or shallow, but diaphragm breathing. Because your diaphragm, it's that old song, your diaphragm is connected to your lower esophageal sphincter. I'll make a song out of it. I don't think it'll rhyme.
More of a rap, it sounds like.
But your lower esophageal sphincter determines on if the stuff goes back up into your esophagus and causes reflux. So if that diaphragm isn't exercised, then your esophageal sphincter, which is a muscle, isn't exercised. It's not toned. It's not getting the nutrition. It's not getting the neurotransmitters. And the connections to it from your diaphragm aren't working either. So you're going to lose it no matter what. So all of these things, take your time, smaller meals, breathe deeply, exercise, all of these things just come, and it doesn't matter, as soon as you start fixing the reflux, I've got my latest presentation on blood pressure I'm doing. I showed that if you go on a blood pressure, our blood pressure lowering diet, even at the lowest level, you lower your risk of diabetes, type 2, reflux, all these various cancers and so on along the way. So wow, to do that you need at least 100 drugs. And all of it's 50-cent solutions because it's all connected.
Yeah, and it must be frustrating for you as a researcher, like you read so many papers. It's science, and yet it's if the average person says this to their doctor, they're going to say, look, there's no evidence on that. The science is incomplete. They're going to say that, yet you're sitting there up to late hours of the night reading all these papers.
No, early hours of the morning.
Early hours of the morning. Yeah, smart.
Early hours of the morning.
Yeah, you don't want to ruin that.
No, look, the studies are there, and they may not. They're not all double-blind placebo-controlled studies, and this is where we get out of whack. We think, hold on, do we have to have the perfect study? No, because we just have to have studies, and so we look and first of all get the animal studies that I told you about. I can create arthritis in animals by literally stopping their production of collagen in their large intestine. That causes arthritis in mice. They then test a drug for it. What? Well, why don't we just fix the collagen in the gut to stop the arthritis? Because there's no money in it. So coming back, so I look at the animal studies in terms of creating disease. Then I look at the animal studies in terms of fixing it. And then we look for the human studies, the links. Often there may not be large clinical studies, but there are often epidemiological studies. So as long as you've got those different layers of it, you're on the right track. And then you see the studies that show the person on the highest quality Mediterranean diet had lowest of these, and this person at the second tier had the next lower. So there's what's called a dose-response relationship. And so all of those factors go together, and you go, okay, this is showing clearly enough evidence, and then finally common sense hit. And olive oil is good for you.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous how much olive oil the Mediterraneans take in a week.
Yep, they drink it.
Liters of the stuff.
It goes on everything.
Yeah.
It goes on everything, and that's the point. Trying to get across. We've got so many different layers of evidence, and when somebody says, "Oh, they don't have a double-blind placebo-controlled study," well, guess what? They don't have that on most of the drugs.
And the thing, that's what I was about to say. That's the frustrating part. It's like you're cherry picking.
Yep.
You need to have that on all the precursor info that you're using to set up your studies in the first place. And like you said, what's the average person on how many medications nowadays?
6 if you're 60.
6
and it goes up. Yeah.
And so there's no research on this medication and that medication and that medication and that medication with this person's. And what about, because what I find interesting, there's a lot of women in there struggling with hormone stuff and blah, blah, blah. The microbiota effect on metabolizing hormones and things like that is huge, and no one really thinks about that.
Yep. Oh, look, somebody comes up to me and says they've got a condition. It's really simple. Fix the gut. It doesn't matter. I can tell you right now, 50% of Parkinson's disease is linked to the gut. Nobody wants it, but they're not going to fix the gut. Diabetes type 1, the major contributing factor to the cause, please get this, of diabetes type 1 is the gut. And what are we doing about it? Zit, nothing. You know, we could be stopping these diseases in their tracks, but there's no money in it. So then that comes to things like hormone imbalances. And what you've got to understand is we've evolved with this gut microbiota. Our microbiome converts and alters. If you drink a cup of green tea, you'll only absorb 6% of the green tea nutrients. If you drink green tea every day for 6 months, you'll absorb 96%.
Yeah, and that's the key right there,
Yeah.
isn't it? That's the key.
Exactly. So your gut microbiome develops its own strategy. The bacteria change to become green tea eating bacteria, and they actually move across their genes and they change their genetic material and activate it to be able to that's amazing, you know, at every level. And what happens then is these things become foods for us, but also neurotransmitters, hormones, neurohormones, all of these different messengers throughout the body, inflammatory cytokines or not. And the same happens with all these foods that we eat that are hormones. Now, we know if you have lots of cosmetics and personal care products, you're getting all these xenoestrogens, foreign estrogens, okay? And you've probably been told that if you have soya, it's good for you. I disagree with that, but if you have soya, it's good for you because it's full of these phytoestrogens, plant-based estrogens. Well, every plant is. Every plant has them. And the key here is to get all of them from a variety of sources. Soya is great in small amounts. It was never meant to be a milk or a drink. It was meant to be fermented, which alters the estrogenicity and the other toxins in it. So that's how it was supposed to be. Western medicine, Western, marketing has changed it. But you get these phyto or plant, phyto means plant, so plant-based nutrients, plant-based estrogens in all of your plants. So you get them in kale. And when you have a bit of raw kale, it converts some of the what's called the isocyanates, okay, and it converts them with a beautiful little enzyme called myrosinase. Myrosinase, yeah, myrosinase. I love it. I love that name.
Rose.
Yeah, I wanted to name my granddaughter after it. Myrosinase.
You're eating too much.
But this myrosinase, if you're having raw, then it'll convert it, and that then converts it into one of the best anti-breast cancer formulations you can get that's ever been discovered and treated and developed in the world. Now, you'll also get it if you cook, but it depends on the microbiome in your gut. So you have a combination of cooked kale and all your cruciferous, what's the other one? Rocket, arugula is a cruciferous family. So, but you mix and match.
Yeah.
So today I've had 3, and by the way, I don't have any hormone issues, particularly women hormone issues. No, my wife, that's all I do, yes. So coming back to it, you enable your microbiome to develop the balance. And it gets it right because it's millions of years of evolution with us. And it then starts, and then when your body wants to balance the estrogen, a lot of the things are dumped out of your body into your large intestine to get rid of cholesterol, which is a building block of all your hormones. Your estrogen and progesterone and testosterone are made out of cholesterol, and so all this stuff gets dumped into your large intestine. And if you get the right microbiome, they convert that, they eliminate it, they control it, they balance it, and they do everything unbelievably what your body needs at that point in time. Because at the same time, they're sensing messages from within the body, something called Quorum Sensing, and they get these little telegrams coming from your brain and your thyroid saying, look, I need some more of this, or I need some less of that, or can you help me out? And they all work together. Isn't that amazing? It's called evolution. And they all work together. And that gets disrupted as soon as you start poisoning the stuff and not eating the right things. And it's not about getting one, in the case of estrogen into your body, or progesterone. It's about getting your gut health so your gut health can rebalance it all.
Yeah.
By far the best.
And because we're talking about this, and I mean, I hope we're not making it sound too simple. I mean, I know a lot of people, they can change it pretty quickly, but back in the day when I used to practice, not everyone could change their microbiota that easily. You'd get them onto a good diet and things like that, and some people seem to have, it would take longer or so.
Look, your microbiome starts to change straight away.
Yes.
Okay, so if you start eating a really healthy, fibre-rich, mixed fibre-rich food straight away, your microbiome is going to change. How much it changes depends on the resilience of what we call the nasty ones, the opportunistic species. And if they're really resilient, well, you've got to knock them out, and you've got to get more of the good ones, which then don't just start reproducing, but poison the bad ones. At a simplest level, you want more of the good ones. And it's not about taking probiotics, it's more about feeding the good ones that you've got in there. Probiotics will boost it and speed that along. So everyone's gut microbiome will start to change instantly. How fast will depend on what's already in there. And if your gut is over, your large intestine or your system is overrun with candida, well, you've got a long-term journey.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess that's where I was talking about before about this low stomach acid, not so much in terms of reflux and things like that, but for things like, because as you know, the stomach acid kills bugs that aren't supposed to be there, and if it's too low, you can be susceptible to then fungi like candida, and then that can cause a whole host of things. So I guess this is coming back, which you've got a great program in your affiliate program, with it's the weed, seed and feed, the classic.
Yep.
If you need to go there.
Oh, look, absolutely, and everybody does. I work on my gut microbiome every day. I do. I literally say, okay, what am I giving that's good? What am I giving that may upset it a little? And last night I had a bit of wine. That upsets it, okay? Yeah. That was my choice. But at the end, and people say, can I have a bit of wine? And look, if you've got a sick gut, no, it's simple. I work on my gut microbiome every single day. I get 5 times the amount that most Australians get in terms of their fibre. I get liquids, which your gut can't work if it doesn't have the liquids.
Yeah.
Your saliva, you produce 1.5 litres of saliva, 2 litres of digestive juices in your stomach. Where's that going to come from? Yeah, you reabsorb it. But most people are dehydrated, and as a result, got all these gut issues that simply can be resolved with drinking more good quality liquids. And for me, good quality liquids are some herb teas, green tea. I drink a lot of green tea, and I drink a lot of water.
Yeah.
So I just walked in here, and when I walk home, which is a 30-minute walk home in the sun today, I'll get home and I'll easily have another litre of water.
Yeah.
Just from the walk and things, and I'll have some just before I leave. And getting these basics right. And what you want to do is make sure you get all of the basics. It's not just probiotics. Probiotics are the, people say, and even when I put this up, people say, what brand? No. Probiotics are the final part of your gut program. Start them now, but if you have them and you're eating a junk food diet, you're sending them on a suicide mission anyway. So they're not going to have, they're going to have half of the impact and no long-term impact. Yeah. So it all comes down to what you put in your mouth. And there is no way around it.
Now, what about fasting? What about intermittent fasting? Does that help reset a little bit, or does it help if there's a bit of an imbalance?
Look, long-term fasting doesn't work well for the gut, apparently, according to the studies. Okay, so here we're talking about fasting more than probably 4 or 5 days. I'll start at the other end. What does work for the gut is what I call the 12-12 eating plan.
Time-restricted feeding.
Time-restricted feeding.
Yeah.
And that's
circadian biology too, isn't it?
Is.
I mean, that should be, like you said, every day type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Your digestive system doesn't want to be digesting. It wants to be absorbing. And the gut so digestion occurs in the top of your, in your stomach, mouth, stomach, and small intestine. And fermentation occurs in your large intestine with the bacteria. And so you don't want to be digesting. You want to be let the bacteria do their fermenting at night time. So always a couple of hours before you go to bed and sleep, and that's, by the way, one of the big resolutions in reflux, 3 hours.
Is that right? 3 hours before you go to bed?
Before you go to bed, and all those other hints I've told you, another 150 more or something. But it really is about getting the rhythms right. So the research shows that for weight loss and reversing diabetes too, and lowering your blood pressure, all of these things, which are all linked together, if you have your last meal at 7, say 7:30, and we get a bit busy, maybe 8 if you have to sometimes, but if we keep the meals earlier, then what happens is your body can run on its own natural clock because of the melatonin in your gut, remember? Serotonin getting out into the system, up to your brain, helping you relax, and doing all those other bits and pieces. When it comes to fasting for a day, a 24 to 48 hour fast, it shows the research is a little bit mixed because the scientists don't really know what the really good bugs are and the really not so good bugs. They know the deadly toxic ones and things, but some microbiome can actually be, under some circumstances, good for you and other circumstances not. So they're doing a bit of guesswork. So fasting probably is, for a couple of days, is probably good for you. But I'm showing you the lack of clarity in the science, okay?
Sure.
So it's probably good for you, but we definitely know 12-hour nighttime fasting is excellent for the gut microbiome and your health and well-being.
Yeah, Satch and Panda's work and all like that. Like you said, the research throughout that is just huge.
Yep.
I mean, you can't be eating all the time.
No.
You can't be digesting.
It's like your body. Look, the simplest way I describe our gut health issues is it's an overrun, overtired, exhausted, run-down system that can no longer function, so it's going to reject everything it can. It'll reject one thing at the other end, and it'll reject the food at the other, at the top end. It's like you've got a house and you just haven't bothered to look after it, and there's no way known. The electrics are broken on it, the gas is broken on it, and but you keep bringing a lot of people into it, and they have parties, and it gets more and more destroyed. And so I go back and say, look, recreate the house, recreate the walls, recreate the nervous system with the electrics of the house, so you can actually do the repairs at night time. But go back to common sense basics, what we're supposed to. Have rest. Here's a good one, don't work as much.
Yeah, you need to, and this is it, because it's so holistic and lifestyle based. Like we talked about the vagus nerve and vagal tone briefly, but man, if you're stressed and your vagal tone is weak and you can't switch to a parasympathetic state and so forth, all your digestive stuff is switched off anyway.
Absolutely.
And then we're back to that problem with like stomach acid problems, this problem, that problem, and then we change the microbiota to a point where you're generating bugs that signal or stimulate anxiety or depression, and then now all of a sudden that mind-body thing is spinning again.
Absolutely.
You just got to break the link.
Yeah. No, look, absolutely. And then you build into what I said, the neurotransmitters like serotonin and melatonin, and well, they're not being produced, so you've got that other vicious cycle in there. And because one of the things that happens in the large intestine when you've got the right amount of fibre. Now, I really want to get this across. If there are two things that we could do in Australia to reverse chronic illness overnight, and we'd start to see the results in a month's time, is if everyone dramatically increased their fibres. Not psyllium, not any of the products like that, but fibres in their diet. And I'll give a plug. That's K-fibre, which you will be selling in the shop very soon when I finish here, okay?
No doubt.
K-fibre. Because it's the most complete fibre for the gut. But what happens is when the fibre, it's not a broom, that's rubbish, old stuff. When it gets into the gut, it's fermented by the good bacteria. And the good bacteria produce all these great nutrients called short-chain fatty acids. And one of them's called butyrate. Now, butyrate comes from the name butter, because you get a lot of butyrate in butter. And this butyrate has been found to have anti-anxiety, stress, depression. You ready? Anti-diabetes too. Anti-plaque on the arteries. You ready for this one? Remember it. Anti-Alzheimer's. So they're now the medical industry is now looking at developing drugs which can increase the butyrate when it can be done by fibre.
Yeah, and bugs.
In fact, the main drug that they use in diabetes type 2 is called Metformin. Metformin, if you inject it, doesn't work. It has to go through the large intestine because it actually breeds up particular bacteria in the gut.
Look at that.
Called Akkermansia mucinophilia.
Yeah.
And mucinophilia means I love mucus, which is where it lives, okay? And it's this bacteria then produces a butyrate, which does all the wondrous things. So why do we take a drug instead of getting everybody in Australia on K-fibre?
We love drugs, Pete. That's what happens.
There's no money
because
in it.
Metformin is like a lot of the longevity dudes and all that. Oh, Metformin. But they don't then break it down to say, why is it working like you just did?
Blood pressure, Metformin. Diabetes, Metformin. Alzheimer's, Metformin.
Yeah.
Hold on. It works through the gut microbiome.
Where's the common ground
So you
here?
can pay for a drug that's, subsidised by the government and cost them, however many $1 billion a year to subsidise it. Or you can go get all these mixed fibres, which you're supposed to have, because that will only still address one area.
And so you're saying, obviously, knowing your stuff and things, you're going to say plant-based fibres and things like that. So So a lot of greens and things like that. But
Yep.
but what about like when it comes to things like oats and cereals and things like that?
Well, look, I'm not a big fan on cereals.
No.
But if you are a cereal eater, and one day I'll write my book called Cereal Killers, okay? But if you are a cereal eater, it comes down to things like barley and oats are the better ones. And they're even better when you mix them with nuts and seeds. And so we'll make some oat cookies at home, which have only got a small percentage of oats in them, but they're mixed in with everything else as well. And they've got buckwheat, they've got almond, ground up almond flour and all that other stuff in it that makes them. And so having less of it, and I can speak as an expert on oats because I know that if I have oats, if I have porridge, it gives me the runs. And I learned that 30 years ago. And so it is one of those things for me, is a trigger.
Yeah.
For gut, and there's a lot of food intolerances out there. People don't realise.
Yeah, well, the lectins thing is huge, isn't it? And
I reckon the lectins is overdone.
well, it was a fatty thing, wasn't it? In a sense.
There's a guy making a lot of money selling his anti-lectin.
Yeah.
Look, lectins are an issue. It's like the nightshades are an issue. They're all issues on sick guts. But I go back and say, well, fix the gut.
Yes.
And these problems go away because we've had beans.
Yeah.
We've had beans for thousands of years. Despite what the paleo eaters and things talk about, we've had beans, we've had nuts.
Hey, but a pressure cooker is a good thing in your kitchen, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, look, here's another little handy hint for everybody out there. I've told you how important melatonin is. When you when you soak and what is it when you've got your beans, you soak them, they start to grow. What's that called?
Sprouting.
Thanks, sprouting. Memory loss there. Okay, I do that at home. When you sprout, you increase the melatonin content in the beans and the nuts and the seeds, whichever you're doing, as a general rule between 4 and 11 times, which is 400% to over 1,000 times.
Wow.
So sprouting is it has lots of benefits.
Yes.
But here is another one in terms of increasing that melatonin content, which will help us all sleep and relax and be calm.
Yeah, man, and I've said it in my first little module in my health program is that I think sleep's a foundation. I really do. Yeah. I think that's we base it on like that, and no one's getting it for various reasons. But hey, this has been some great gold today on the melatonin stuff. Can I just quick? I just want to finish off with some quick, and we'll get you back if we can, because you're the only guest I ever get that just keeps. Normally I'm the one.
Look, I've got 35 years of research.
Yeah, man, and a lot of passion too.
And every day I spend a couple of hours. My holiday is researching. In between grandkids, and in between all the other things, my walk and my beach and all those other things, I take just as seriously.
You start to put all the pieces together, and that becomes addictive, doesn't it? When you start to reinforce your beliefs in what you're finding.
And so look, at the end of there is just so much research, and look, I'll be doing this for another 40 years, which will just take me over 100, and then I'll probably retire. And
so why are you so healthy? Because I've known you for a long time, and you haven't aged, so you're either drinking some sort of vampire blood formula or something like that, or you've got it dialed in. You've worked it out.
Well, look, I've got a balance. It's like what you said, sleep. I probably had a lot of sleep issues like most people. When I retired from being an academic, that improved. Because again, you're not. Sleep is linked to everything. Sleep. They've done studies on mice. Here are my mice studies. Okay, to induce hypertension and or reflux in mice, they limit their sleep. Hold on. What's that got to have a guess? It's all nervous system, parasympathetic nervous system balance, vagal nerve tone, all those things. So it's critical. It's critical. Sleep, every single health condition. And yet, you're not getting enough sleep, and we just accept it. No, don't accept it. Do it. Get it. Build it into your life. And I know if you're a mum, because I've got grandkids and my daughters and that, and, when our grandkids stay over, we don't get sleep. It's not about those one-off nights. Or it's about just making sure, and make sure you're program it in with your kids. Sleep is absolutely critical, as is stress, which is the other part of the side of sleep and so on. They're all a part. Nutrition. So what do? Well, I make sure I get good sleep. I make sure every day I get some good exercise. I make sure every day I go to the gym. I go to the gym probably 2 or 3 times a week. But every other day I'm out walking. I'll do a little bit of swimming. I don't do anything overboard. You know, the big athletes in the world aren't the ones who live longer. In fact, you'll see most of them have deteriorated by 45 and whatever else. The message is do lots of little good things that you know are good for you. And as a result, it just keeps it gets easier. It's a habit. As I said, last night we had wine, a couple of glasses of wine, a mate come over and we didn't expect it. Well, let's have it, enjoy it. But we enjoy it. But it's not going overboard. And then we said, okay, let's make sure we supplement. I have a turmeric mix, a green mix, and a K-fibre mix every day without... that one tastes terrible, by the way I mix them in. But, I say, hey, it doesn't matter. I have a smoothie virtually every day. So I've already had my smoothie and my mix out there. I've had more veggies the equivalent of more veggies in the morning than most people would get in a week. And all of that is in with my lifestyle and other factors. And then the other part is purpose and, purpose and having a direction in life. Sure, I've got purpose I look after my grandkids and do all that stuff, but I've also got this purpose to get people well, those driving forces for me at the beginning, get this message out to people. And people go, well, how old are you? I'm 64. I go, wow, hold on, you're 64 and you're, da-da-da. Well, that's the best way for me to get the message across. Oh, you're lucky. Nothing to do with luck. Nothing to do with genetics. It's, genetics play a 5% role, luck plays a 5% role, and the rest is what you do to yourself. So, and that purpose for me every day, as I said, we I do that research and I come with these epiphanies and then I endeavour to get it out. And I'll give a little plug here. One of the things we do is we have a fantastic membership program that when we develop a new program, and you've got to remember I've got 30 years of old ones, I still haven't got around to putting up a new one. So next month we'll be putting up the blood pressure one, we've got the reflux one, we've got the Sibo one, we've got the irritable bowel syndrome one. We've already got programs up there to reverse it, so people can actually stop having reflux and stop having all these conditions, and we put them all together in a membership. And so people can have full access for, I think it's $75 for a year. And every month,
that's less than a consult nowadays.
Every month we're putting on more. So because people will have reflux and high blood pressure, and when they go on the reflux program, the high blood pressure will lower, but then there are other things you can do. And vice versa, when you go on the high blood pressure program, lowering it, and as I said, there's thousands of studies on showing that, then it lowers the reflux. And that's why we put all these programs together, so people get the gist. And they're saying they've got a lot of overlap, but they've got all their new material. And my passion is to just keep building on that and make it, I think it's already a world first in terms of the content, I really do. And I just want to make it a world first in terms of getting out in there in the public. And that's what I'm not good at. I'm not good at marketing because I'd rather do the research.
You need a team. No, but I think what you're doing is a great thing, because nowadays there's too much information out there. I mean, we're in an information age now, and it's like an excess, and people just get overwhelmed and they don't know what to do, and it's conflicting. So what you've put together is such a great resource for people, and you're the one putting it up there, doing all the research. So it's not as if this is a theory or an opinion. This is evidence-based.
Yep. Absolutely. With the different layers of the evidence, remember? And I put that up in the studies, and I talk about it in common language, but I put it up so that people can then say, that's what he was talking about. This is my studies. And there are studies on probiotics. And there is study on fluoride causing those problems. And they can skip them if they want, but if they just go through it and a little bit sinks in, they will know more. They will know more than any of the general practitioners, health professionals out there, except the ones studying nutrition themselves.
And themselves.
Even those people don't get enough time. They don't get the time I do.
Yeah.
They don't get hours every day. They don't get 30 years of experience in a research teams and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's the key, because you're a researcher in health and environmental health. Yep. I mean, that's the thing. You're not like trying to do everything. Well, that kind of is. But I mean, that's your thing.
Yeah, it is.
So you're not. Do you treat people who know? Your wife would?
Well, Martine will see some, rarely, simply because Martine helps with this side of it. And,
right.
like everything, it's it's a business, and we want to keep doing this. And to keep doing it, we need more members. So Martin's working on just started working on the marketing program of it to get it out there, and but it's a journey. You can lead the horse to water. I found you can actually give them the water. You can put it in their mouth and they still won't drink.
So it's the truth. That's the truth. So your website, I'll put all this information up as well so people can go there, but it's a great resource. All your books are there.
And hundreds of free blogs.
Yes.
Hundreds of free blogs. With most of them reference directly to the journal.
Yeah, you just got to want to drink the water. At the end of the day, you've got to have a thirst for this stuff. I mean, if you want a safe way to do it, evidence-based, then here you are. But if you don't want to...
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I've just recently gone to TikTok.
Well, you're doing some dances now.
Well, no. I started dancing, but then I thought, people started liking just because of what I was doing and saying thank you for this. And we're getting 1,200 followers a week.
Wow.
Well, I've only been doing it 3 weeks, and I'm wrapped because I'm getting to this younger age group.
Yes.
And the people are putting up on the comments, thanks, fantastic information, I love it, and give me lots of questions which I'll never get around to answering because there's too many. But it's getting it out. And warming people. Something I talked on TikTok, and I'll mention it, vitamin C. You can't heal the gut without vitamin C. It's the building block of collagen, which is your gut. The building block of your gut is vitamin C. You can't do it without vitamin C. Someone doesn't mention to you vitamin C for reflux, and vitamin C for Sibo, and vitamin C for esophageal, and vitamin C for IBS, then they've lost the plot. You see where it all comes back together. And it's not one thing, though. You've got to have them all. It's a puzzle.
Do you take vitamin C by itself, or you just get it through your food?
I supplement 3 grams a day.
That important?
Yeah, I do. Supplement 3 grams a day, on top of as much fresh stuff I can.
And you break that out? You have it like 1.5 in the morning and night, or do you just drop it?
Look, I drop it in the morning.
Yeah.
I'm lazy. It's simply a matter of, I kind of tend to do my focused nutritional stuff first thing in the morning, and then I have my salad, my raw food. And then at dinner time, I have, probably a 50-50 raw cooked meal.
Yeah.
So, I kind of spread it out. I know what I'm eating most times and things like that. And we do a lot of travelling.
Yes.
As well. And so you've got to be able to just, hey, you get into the hotel room, this is what you do.
Brilliant. So great. Look, we'll do it again.
Yep.
And because there's so many things I want to cover. Because I know one of your first books was Sick House. That's when you were on TV back in the old days. You were doing the Sick House.
Yeah. Is your home making you sick?
Is your home making you sick? I'm huge on that stuff. I'd like to talk about that, a lot of environmental poisons, and keep, obviously, the conversation going on the microbiota and biome. Because the thing is, like, people talking genetics, but, like, the microbiome is driving more genetic traffic than ours.
That's where it all goes on in the gut. And it can alter your genetic expression. It can alter literally your genetic expression by what's going on in the gut.
Yeah.
And most of the vaccines actually work directly or indirectly, if they do work, through the gut. And most medications do too. Without the gut, they won't be as effective or whatever else. Everything goes through the gut, and so we just don't understand.
And the numbers don't lie, man. What is it? Like 90% of the cells in the body or something? I forget now. I used to know all that. All that sort of jive. It's not as if it's 50-50. It's
no. The vast majority of the cells in your
99%
body.
of the genetic expression or something. It's
massive.
In your gut. Yeah. So it's ridiculous for us not to have the hierarchy set by that.
Yep.
And that's the gut doctor. You'll be keeping us all up to date with that. So thanks again.
That's a pleasure.
Pete. And we'll direct people to your website. Do it for one consult, $75. You've got a year's worth of info. If you want to heal, it's got to be all there.
Look, we're solution-based. I give the science, but at the end of each of those programs, we actually say, and here is the 30-minute video on what you need to do, stage 1, stage 2, easy, hard, essential, necessary. I put it in terms like that.
Yeah.
So they'll start off doing this, it's easy, that one's essential, that one's a bit longer, okay.
Yeah. There's nothing more you can do, man.
I break it down as simple as I can, because my wife, that's where Martine, as a naturopath, she said, Pete, just make it a program that people can follow.
Yes.
And that's what it's about.
Yay. Brilliant. Okay.
Hey, buddy.
Till next time.
Absolutely. Thanks.
See you later.